Chapter 1. He stood in front of a full-length mirror, using his fingers to style his wet, freshly colored hair. He decided the temporary hickory brown dye looked good on his short curls. He thought that maybe one day he'd color it permanently. After all, he could alter his appearance as often as he needed, with brown hair instead of black. He changed his mind after applying the color to his eyebrows and mustache. Just tonight, he said to himself. Then he slid on a pair of low-prescription glasses. They fit perfectly. It was almost as if they were made for him. The jeans he chose were dark blue and a little more fitted than he'd worn in a while. The T-shirt he picked out was loose around the waist and hugged his mid-sized arms just slightly. Printed on the front of the T-shirt was a photo of a band named Inksnake. He hated Inksnake. Tonight, he thought, I'll be a smoker. He grabbed a pack of cigarettes and a jukebox-shaped lighter from a shoebox he kept hidden underneath his bed. Next, he slid a freshly printed ID card off the printer and inspected his work. As he stuffed the props into his pant pocket, he lifted a silver keychain off the dresser and twirled it around his finger. He whistled as he headed toward the front door of his lavish townhome-style apartment, and just as he headed out the door, he tucked a 4-inch blade, encased in a leather sheath, into his back pocket. Just in case, he thought. Just in case I need it for protection. He drove for nearly 40 minutes before reaching Club Neutron. The line to get inside was long, but moved quickly. At the door, he presented his ID card, which displayed a picture of him with a bald head. Door attendants usually didn't overanalyze an ID with a picture of a bald man, because men were prone to look dramatically different with hair than without it. This detail had proven true for him on more than a few occasions. The unusually bright nightclub was brimming with middle-aged suburbanites. The song playing beckoned listeners. Come as you are, which was an unrealistic request in such a place. What's your name? Called a slender brunette, whose revealing clothing left very little to the imagination. His mind went blank. He couldn't remember the name he'd printed on his ID just a short while before. He quickly responded with, Casey. I'm Casey. The near-naked woman pointed to a tattoo of a kitten on her stomach, and, with a flirty smile, replied, I'm Kat. Well, Catherine. But you can call me Kat. Okay, he said, just moments from disinterest, knowing that with the beautiful Catherine, there would be no challenge at all. His assumptions were confirmed only seconds later as Kat leaned in, wrapped her left arm around his shoulder, and while pressing her breast against his chest said, I hate coming to clubs, don't you? I mean, I hate this club. I just want to leave. Don't you just want to leave? Excuse me. She stumbled, struggling to keep her balance as she tried to figure out whether her question made sense or not. I'm not married. I'd like to be, and you? Casey couldn't decide if he thought the woman was extremely intoxicated or just an idiot. Either way, he politely smiled and said, Excuse me. As he removed her arm from his shoulder, he started toward the bar. The puzzled Cat began yelling vulgarities, but was distracted by another gentleman standing nearby. On his way through the congested crowd, Casey spotted a group of 5, 3 sitting and 2 standing at a round table near the bar. They will do, he thought. He made his way over to the group and introduced himself. I'm Casey, he said, shaking hands with the 2 men who were standing up, and without effort, he lifted a stool from the nearby table and sat it between 2 of the women. They seemed to be impressed with his boldness, considering he wasn't invited to join them. It was easy to fit into this group of upper-class wannabes. They worked together at an insurance firm in the middle of the city, and got together every Wednesday night to unwind and make believe they were still relevant members of the party scene. Tammy, the youngest of the group, at 27 years old, was very inquisitive. This was great for KC, because it gave him a chance to compose answers, which was something that he thrived on. So, KC, how old are you? She asked. I'm 28, he said. No way, she shrieked. But you look so much younger. They all agreed and took turns calling out how old they thought he looked. Someone said 24, another said 21. Tammy said if she didn't know better, she'd mistake him for a teen. A very attractive teen, but a teen nonetheless. What do you do? Tammy continued, as she twirled her sandy blonde hair around her finger. Casey smiled with pride as he answered, I am a systems analyst for Microglobe Technologies. Wow, that sounds boring, she replied. They all laughed. Where's the office? Well, we have a small office just outside the city, but I'm rarely there. I'm normally sent out when our clients need me. He realized that this career choice wasn't exactly keeping the others' interest. What's your name again? Casey called to the short, stocky man who stood hunched over the chair of his ravishing Vietnamese co-worker, Lena. I'm Justin, he said, looking a little annoyed. Well, Justin, you look like something's bothering you. What's up, man? A little thrown off by his candor, but happy to answer, Justin replied smugly. It's just, well, don't you have friends to get back to? You didn't actually come here alone, did you? Justin, Tammy shouted. You'll have to excuse him, Casey. As you can see, his height isn't the only thing that didn't reach its full potential. He didn't mean that the way it sounded. No one said anything after that. Casey commenced showing everyone how offended he was by staring intensely at the bowl of peanuts that sat half empty in the center of the table. Next, Todd, Justin's best friend and co-worker, ended the uncomfortable silence by asking Lena to dance. She accepted, and the two headed toward the dance floor. Casey remembered the pack of cigarettes in his pocket and figured that now was as good a time as any to smoke one. Before he knew it, Tammy reached across the table, grabbed Casey's hand, and pulled him out of his seat. No way I'm letting them have all the fun, she said. She nearly knocked over 3 people as she forced her way through the crowd to where Todd and Lena were dancing. Tammy and Casey began to dance. The stranger to the group, who had named himself Casey, never danced. None of his previous outings required him to do so. As far back as he would allow himself to remember, he'd always shied away from situations where he would have to. Tonight, he was Casey, and Casey loved to dance. He wasn't sure if he was a good dancer, but judging by the look on Tammy's face, he was doing all right, pretty good even. Eventually, Justin swallowed his pride and asked Eliza, the third and most ordinary-looking woman in the group, to dance. Shortly after, the whole posse congregated at the center of the dance floor. Casey took turns dancing with the 3 women. He changed partners at almost every new song. It was clear by the look on Justin and Todd's faces that these particular ladies weren't normally so unrestrained on the dance floor. Justin didn't hide his displeasure from watching the woman he had an enormous crush on, Tammy, dancing with another man. On more than one occasion, he attempted to cut in between Casey and Tammy, but his attempts were unsuccessful. Tammy merely gave Justin a cordial smile and turned her back to him, unaware of the damage she had done to Justin's ego. During a brief moment of rest, Casey made observations about the group of posers he'd chosen to spend the evening with. Lena was stunning. Her short, curly hair hung over the sides of her face, drawing attention to her brown, sparkling eyes, and her near-perfect figure suggested that she'd spent many hours in the gym. Eliza was carefree and spent the majority of the evening in her own world, enjoying the company of herself. It was clear that she didn't fit into the group. She was left out of much of the conversation, but didn't seem to mind. Her brunette hair came down to the center of her back and appeared neglected, and her sense of style left much to be desired. Justin was very well groomed. His short, spiky haircut was obviously inspired by some member of a pop music boy band, and his designer clothing was intended to be worn by someone about 10 years younger. Todd had blonde hair and gray eyes. His broad shoulders and stocky build sat strangely on his abnormally short legs. Other than his unique outward appearance, Todd wasn't leaving much of an impression on Casey. He stayed pretty quiet and seemed nice enough, but Casey knew that how we see others and who they really are can be 2 very different things. Finally, there was Tammy. Casey was smitten by her long, slender legs and shapely hips. Her navy blue dress was short and sexy, but Casey thought it made her look classy. Overall, Casey found the group of unique personalities appealing. It was 4 a.m., and through a speaker came a loud, drunken voice that sloppily bellowed, "Evening, guys and girls. It's time to go. Thanks for stopping by. Now get out." Though they had danced and talked for hours, it was clear that this usually reserved group was not ready for the evening to end. They headed outdoors and stood on a street corner, brimming with energy, Lena began asking Casey questions about his family and background. Casey told them he was from a mixed heritage of African American and Spanish. Then he explained how he was born in Baltimore and raised the only child of a single father who loved him dearly. Question after question was posed by the easily intrigued bunch. Casey never took more than a moment to come up with fascinating yet convincing answers, none of which were even remotely truthful. Casey and Tammy walked ahead of the others as they headed towards the carport where they had parked. She told him how great he had made the evening for her and asked if he would like to continue their conversation at her place. He declined, stating that he had an early meeting to attend, and when she asked him to take her telephone number, he accepted, knowing that he would never call. He knew that Casey would not be around after tonight, and that he couldn't afford to make a connection with a woman like Tammy, not that he would have the first clue about how to do so. Leaning against the black sports car, he acted as if he were looking for his car keys and waved as Tammy and her friends drove away. A young man and woman approached cautiously, and he realized that the car he was leaning against belonged to them. He apologized and walked calmly toward an elevator that led to the lowest level of the parking structure. The couple watched curiously as he stepped onto the elevator, turned to face them, and winked. When he reached his car, he looked to see if anyone from inside the club was around. He found himself alone in the gloomy carport. With ample parking on the above levels, not many people chose to park in the secluded area unnecessarily. Saturated by a feeling of contentment, he got into his car and was on his way. When he returned home, he immediately removed the glasses and threw his shirt in the laundry bin. He then filled his black marble garden bathtub almost to the brim with near scalding hot water. When he climbed in, water spilled out onto the bathroom floor. He didn't mind. He enjoyed the sound it made. He studied his body as the heat from the water turned his skin from a pale brown to a deep red. He wished he could induce this effect without the assistance of water. He imagined how having skin this color could open up a whole new set of roles he could play. Lying in the bathtub meant it was time for him to recount the events of the evening. He would meditate on some of the people he met and the things that took place before making mental notes about what he'd learned. First, there was Kat. Kat, he thought, was the kind of girl that always needed to have a man around. Her drunken desperation told him that she was the type of girl that would be harder to get rid of than to have sex with. He could also see that she wasn't very intelligent. If she were, she would have recognized that he wasn't the least bit interested in her. He also believed that in order for someone to drink that much, they had to be trying to drink away some personal problem. This wasn't her first time trolling the club for a husband. He knew Kat was the kind of woman who spent many fruitless nights trying and failing to find love. Go out, get drunk, go home with someone, repeat. She would probably never realize that she had more to offer a man than sex. For just a moment, he started to relate to her, because like her, he was also a slave to addiction. His addictions, however, consisted of what some may consider more serious vices. While Kat was likely to be found at the same club every weekend, he made certain never to go to the same club twice, and whereas Kat could always be found searching for a husband, his search from day to day was always for something different than it was the day before. Nevertheless, he was addicted to change. The next person that he thought about was Justin. He theorized that for a man to behave as Justin did, he had to be a pathetic, self-hating loser. Justin was the kind of man who always tried to bring attention to others in some negative way, hoping that no one would notice that he was the one with immeasurable flaws. Also, Justin liked Tammy, who didn't return his affection. While Justin should have accepted his inability to win Tammy's heart, he wouldn't. Instead, he was willing to make a complete fool of himself for her in front of his friends and strangers. Then there was Tammy, beautiful, outgoing and positive. She seemed to be the leader of her group, but without trying. When she spoke, she commanded the attention of her peers, and when she danced, it was as if gravity was temporarily suspended just for her to glide across the floor. Eliza was the classic introvert. There, but not really there. She would have been just as happy sitting at home alone watching TV or reading a book. Although Todd and Lena didn't do or say anything remarkable, he believed that almost everyone was more interesting than they appeared outwardly. His assessment was finished. He was proud of his ability to accurately identify and understand the character of each individual he met. It gave him great pleasure knowing that no matter how much he learned about others, They could never learn anything real about him. He slid down underneath the water in order to wash the temporary color from his face and hair. The color of the water changed from soapy white to brown. After about an hour of soaking in the tub, he pulled the stopper from the drain and stood to his feet. He watched as the filthy water twirled like a tornado down the drain, carrying away the last traces of Casey. He pulled an extra-large grey bath towel from a towel rack on the wall and wrapped it around his waist. He walked into the kitchen and headed straight for a cupboard that hung above his stovetop. Then, he reached inside and pulled out a tin can of boneless sardines and a package of saltine crackers. The stale silence of his beautiful yet empty home broke his heart. He closed his eyes as he ate, trying to forget that he was alone. He'd given up on the possibility of one day filling his home with the sound of loved ones' laughter or a child's playful banter, knowing that tomorrow he would become someone else again. Someone who wasn't alone, gave him comfort. He finished his meal, then walked to the stairs that led to his bedroom. The spiral staircase was made of chrome and iron, which caused a clanking sound whenever he walked up or down it. He loved the sound his footsteps made as he used the stairs because it was distracting, and he loved to be distracted. When he reached his room, he walked straight to a large oak wood dresser and removed a pair of pajama bottoms from his bottom drawer. He then removed the towel from his waist and dressed himself before crawling into bed. This was all done without turning on a single light. He preferred darkness and knew the dimensions of his home well enough to walk through it blindfolded, without so much as knocking one item out of place. Then, inside his bed, he pulled a blanket over his head and fell quickly to sleep.